Good afternoon from America's man's man. It's the 11th day of Christmas, 12th day of Christmas being tomorrow. Lots of internet rumors about how did the 12 days of Christmas come out but just like so much millennial garbage, there are so many. It basically amounts to a bunch of email chain wisdom, which is really no wisdom at all. And for those of you who don't know what I mean by email chain wisdom, back when Al Gore invented the internet, and please don't believe that because that's sarcasm, facetiousness, if you will. Back when Al Gore did not invent the internet, he claimed to once upon a time. I think he's been backing off of that recently. Back when Al Gore invented the internet, they used to have these things called chain emails because people got email, and people on their own. I mean, I'll tell you, chain emails were better than what the internet has become today, because today people are marvelously manipulated by the internet. You have to keep in mind, the entire internet is very little more than fake news on steroids, okay? There is very little wisdom in the fake news. The fake news, once upon a time, among a wiser American populace, people used to talk about political issues of the day. And what the left done, what communists have done, is a lot of people don't even understand that the medium of film itself, as we know it today, the very basic premises of things you don't typically think about when you're going to watch a movie, just cutting from one shot to another. The editing techniques that Hollywood uses today actually started in Russia as a means of propagating whatever the communist regime wanted the people to believe. And this is, in fact, it was quite pornographic, and then it resulted in what Rush Limbaugh used to call gorebasms, which were eulogizations of dictator Mikhail Gorbachev in Russia, the same way that today the fake news is eulogizing the Iranian terrorist leader Soleimani, who killed millions of Americans, attacked our embassy, and was plotting to attack more Americans until we took him out. And of course, Nancy Pelosi is so upset that we took out this threat to America, and not only America, but people all around the world who are trying to do good for their fellow man. So the left, the fake news, all of this is to really just say, and I've said this before, and I know I'll say it a million other times, because if it sounds like it's getting old, it's only because repetition is the mother of learning and attitude change, and so I can't stress it enough that you should never ever trust the fake news media. I worked with these people. I worked with Laurie Kirby at WBZ in Boston. She was my mentor, my communist. She tried to turn me to the dark side of fake news, and was not successful. And of course, that's why I don't work there. I wouldn't accept the idiocy. A lot of people just you find the wrong area of town, people just kind of throw themselves out in the middle of the street. They're kind of daring you to run them over. Got to be very careful driving. Anyway, especially after New Year. It's funny, one of the communist ditzes at Boston's overtly state-run classical music station was narrating. She's like, sometimes I feel depressed after the holidays, and so I'll bet you do too. So let's go over to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston and watch this new exhibit that they have. Okay, sounds good, right? And she says it's it's on the repressed Islamist terrorists living in the United States. I'm like, oh, okay, well that'll make us all feel better, right? But this is the lunacy of the left. Anyway, so that's what your tax dollars are being spent on. Wonderful public radio that promotes terrorism. But anyway, the main takeaway here: don't trust the fake news. Don't ever trust the fake news. And this may sound like an exaggeration to you because habitually you are so tied to Google, you're so tied to YouTube, and do not buy YouTube Plus because that's run by Google and they're tracking you every single place you go. If anything, just go to americasmansman.com and check out the free actionable wisdom there for free, videos like this, because you know that this video right here, this is going to be banned from Google. It's only a matter of time. If you don't believe me, just wait. It'll happen. But don't trust the fake news. Whatever you do, if you get nothing else from anything that I ever say, don't trust the fake news. Don't trust the fake news. Don't trust the fake news. My former fake news boss, a man named Aaron Aldridge, he's due to be getting out of prison lately for doing some very bad things. Not a reputable people kind of join the fake news infotainment industry. ABC, CBS. In fact, and I want to illustrate this point. What do I mean by don't trust the fake news? Well, I got to get my information from somewhere. What if I told you, and I swear, without any fear of error, that this is true, if you hear something from ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, they've got, first of all, the Democratic Party is no longer in control of itself, and this is one of the problems. I know it's going to sound completely off the wall to some of you who are uninitiated, haven't been following me a long time, but it's the Democratic Party. Females tend to think more emotionally than logically. They're not thinking, well, gee, this A happens, and this A causes B, and B causes C. They're all about the feeling. So this is how. And we have Nancy Pelosi, and she's leading the Democratic Party. And this is not to say that women are not worthy of being taken care of and being worthy of respected by virtue of who God made them to be. And I'm not suggesting any of that. But I am suggesting that females are, and this is how homosexuality has become a thing in a nation where half of the nation that votes is female. Women are tremendously subject to emotional manipulation. And that's what the fake news is really good at. The fake news has come up with a completely nonsensical argument. It makes about as much sense as the Monty Python plot where they for burning witches or whatnot. That's the level of lunacy. That's the level of absurdity that the fake news functions on. But so the Democratic Party is no longer in control of itself. It's gone so far off the rails, and it's done this because you have AOC plus 3, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and the other whoever there, the one going death to America, that crowd, and the Democratic Party didn't get this way but it's probably Nancy Pelosi's maternal instinct that, well, gee, because that's the problem, is that you have the principal problem with a woman attempting to lead men, which is against the Bible, by the way, our nation's de facto governing document above all documents, including the Constitution and Declaration of Independence, etc. You have is that Nancy Pelosi wants to she's very susceptible. She's there's this girl in her own party, and she's treating her like a, you know, like the child that she is. You know, she's reacting based on years of watching television, and you know, and of course, the fake news has been lying to everybody for a very long time. So there's a whole bunch of emotional appeals that that really don't have any grounding in logic whatsoever. AOC is like a lot of millennials in that regard. She just has all these faint notions of artistic whimsy that the fake news has planted in her mind all these years. Like a lot of millennials. And she just kind of strings them together in some kind of subterfuge of a notion of what the Constitution is that really has no grounding in reality, because she doesn't understand the Constitution. She didn't actually read any of it, and that's apparent by every single thing that she says. It's marvelous to watch her crash into things, and it's entertaining. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the other three are, I suppose, they epitomize what happens when you get your education, what do they call it? Edutainment, we'll call it, from the fake news media, which you know, someone else already wrote a book on that phenomenon. It's called "Amusing Ourselves to Death." I recommend it tremendously. And so she's really the epitome of edutainment and infotainment all gone wrong. And it's kind of funny to watch, but Nancy Pelosi is just naturally is suckered in by all these crazy antics, even to Nancy Pelosi's impending demise, it seems. So Nancy Pelosi has backed herself into a corner of late, and of course that's a far cry from what this video is about. But I'm just trying to illustrate the point of the Democratic Party is no longer in control of itself. It's gone hysterically off the rails, and you will become like that Democratic Party if you continue to watch the fake news. The fake news, ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, even Fox News, with the occasional exception of Fox and Friends, which you can watch for free on YouTube, at least for now. Maybe they'll block it as a result of this video, but you got. You too will end up like AOC, like the Democratic Party, if you continue to watch the fake news. Okay, so you'll just go off the rails. You'll start saying things that aren't making sense, and you'll do it because because of stupidity, because of sheer ignorance. But the good news is that ignorance or wisdom is a choice. You can choose wisdom. You can choose ignorance. You can choose to take the New York Times as gospel, the hack anti-American propagandists at the New York Times. So now that may warrant an explanation for you. So let me try to explain that for you real quick. So the profit centers are what drives the fake news. Okay, the profit. Most of their, and this is historically kind of how the fake news has gotten into this bad position that it's in. They make their bread and butter. It's not the farmers, the people that make the trains run, who are actually watching the stuff. It's mostly people who have nothing better to do, who are on the Dems welfare programs, that live in the inner city, that watch the fake news. And of course, there are only so many inner city centers. And by the way, this is why the overpopulation myth of environmental Greenpeace wackos appeals to the fake news so much, is because all the fake newsers are pretty much located in the middle of these big cities, and the inner city, where, as you know, people are crammed together so much that it's not a difficult sell by the fake news to say, well, gee, everything's getting overpopulated, whereas, all the good people that make this country run out in places like Idaho and Nebraska, they got plenty of room, and they're like, I don't see any people around here. So the fake news, they're playing to their base. The fake news is playing to their contingency. If you live anywhere near a city, there are way too many people that are all squeezed into one place, and they're all squeezed into one place because of because of welfare state programs that actually don't help them, but they cling to because they don't know any better, because they've been watching fake news. So they're places like even New York used to be a really, really wonderful place, even if you were a young person starting out, but it was the welfare programs, that just drew, like a magnet, just drew everybody like a magnet in there. So all of the worst off people came to the big city so that they could basically leech off the government, our taxes, and the cities have never been the same since. And of course, Barack Obama, attempting to fix the problem, started dumping refugees in all the good places like Idaho and Nebraska and Chicago, and to much swells of violence upon the American people. A lot of illegals that he dumped in there. People who would have been illegal if Barack Obama didn't say they were illegal. Basically, Barack Obama legitimized the entry of terrorists into the United States. All of which is to say that the fake news, the people watching fake news, they mostly live in these welfare centers, and again, they have no education, but they're sucking your teat in the form of your taxes. Yeah, they're sucking us too. Yeah, the men too. They're sucking our tits. All the welfare recipients, and you can't swat them off, because the government, through various equal opportunity nonsense, they said nope, you got to keep these guys sucking your teats, even if of course, with the legalization of sodomy, they're actually forcing America to bend over and grab their ankles now, and at a very young age in the public schools. But this is this is now. I mean, all of this got started because of the fake news playing to their core audiences who live in the inner city, who are sucking the government, who are sucking your teat in the form of welfare checks, and men and women both. Equal opportunity teat suckers is what bureaucracy, the left, the communists turn everybody into. And the Democratic Party is not ultimately the driving force of this communism. They're a victim of it, really. Again, as we're seeing in the Pelosi train wreck, really the driving force that the Democratic Party has fallen prey to is the fake news. The fake news has created an image, has created a propaganda campaign. The show business types that live in it, and they're profiteers. Because remember, when Americans are doing well, when there's peace and prosperity like there is now in America, the fake news isn't really making a lot of money. Nobody's watching TV. We have better things to do with our time than to watch the fake news. So the fake news has a vested interest in making you and me miserable. Because if we're miserable, then maybe we're gonna watch the fake news, CNN, they'll use that to manipulate us even more, and tell all the people living in the ghettos across the country that the way that they can help America best is by rebelling and burning flags, and killing police officers and all that fake news nonsense. So basically, when America wins, the fake news loses. They don't make any money. They can't sell you as a buyer of things they advertise and during commercials to advertisers. They can't convince us that we should be shelling out money on cable television, because we don't have a need for it, and it's frankly it's a complete waste. So or those silly net all the online streaming services. I don't want to say the name of it because I don't want them to get any any more viewers from this, but the new Disney Plus, just all nonsense, all complete garbage, and they can, but the only reason that they can sell it, even though it's not art, like fallmusical.com is high art, the only reason they can sell this video trash to people like you and me is because most millennials don't know any better. But I'm telling you, as one who has studied and worked with the fake news, has been on the inside of CBS, has been on the inside, who worked for a fake newser who was convicted of a felony and is actually getting out of jail sometime soon, so he'll be back on the streets. Up in the Shire, up in New Hampshire. I've got so many stories related to that. But the main idea here, if you take nothing else away from this, is don't trust the fake news. Don't trust the fake news. There's so much back and forth. You have, people get, I don't know, some kinds of people get worked up about Rush Limbaugh talking. He's like, well, gee, why is he saying all this this controversial stuff? He's really just trying to correct all the insanity that the left has caused, and that's why he's been so successful. That's why Rush Limbaugh, most popular radio host in America by far, has spawned so many imitators, so many people like Sean Hannity and Mike Huckabee, and they all look to Rush at the end of the day. And like I said, they've blazed their own trail, but no one has been as popular on radio by far than Rush Limbaugh, and it's something like a 2-decade legacy now and counting. And the reason so many people listen to him, down home people in places like Ohio, good people, good country people, if you will, good country people in Ohio and in Montana and even Florida, even now, the hub of the universe where I'm speaking from, where again there's the overpopulation myth falls on fertile soil because everybody is jam-packed so close together because of all of the misguided policies of bureaucratic communist leftists like Barack Obama. I mean, if there was ever an illegitimate president, we the American people know who that was. And it's these weird programs where they convince people that they need to be sucking the government teat in order for survival. That was never the way America was supposed to function, and the founders would be spinning over in their graves if they would be spinning, what have you, in their graves if they ever thought that this kind of thing would happen. But don't trust the fake news. Don't trust the fake news. They say these outlandish, crazy things because they're playing to their core, which is the leftist government-dependent inner-city mob, who would breathe easy if they'd just leave the city and do something useful, but they're afraid because the fake news and Democrats have put them in a state of fear. If you don't want to end up in that state of fear, if you want to do great things with your life, then again, there's so much back and forth in the discourse today. It's not a discourse. Basically, the Democrats shout whatever the fake news tests and tells them to shout, and they do it over and over and over again. The strength of the fake news does not lie in its intelligence because their IQs are so low. Most of the infotainment hacks, the performers that get on the fake news, they're chosen to do that because they go along with what they're told to do. They do what they're told. They're minions. And they don't think for themselves. They're incapable of thinking for themselves. They don't know any other way than to get up on television and to read off the teleprompter and occasionally digress with some talking points that have been fed to them by polls, like Bill Clinton always took polls, said whatever the market polls said that people wanted him to hear, because that's It's Bill Clinton. I don't know which poll told him to do one of his interns, but oh no, I do. Anyway, so the fake news is never ever to be trusted. Again, to illustrate this point further, and again, this is going to sound like a gross exaggeration to a lot of you, but it's only because you are so married by habit. Habit is a very strong force. It's why people never get in shape. It's why people stay stupid their whole lives. It's why people suck the government teat from cradle to grave, which is exactly what the communists want. And it may be that you're glued to YouTube videos like this, other videos. Most videos aren't like this. And again, they're going to axe me when they find out about the things I'm saying. And they have. They've tried to. I've already gotten into YouTube jail and Twitter jail more than once, and I'm proud that I have, of course, because I'm America's man's man, and I wouldn't have it any other way, because otherwise I wouldn't be sharing the truth with you. I'd just be another hack going along with what they want me to tell you. But there's no reward. There's no long-term reward, not in heaven, not on earth, in telling you what they want me to tell you. So I'm going to tell you the truth, and the truth is that if you hear something, if you see something, doesn't matter if it's a video, doesn't matter if it's something spoken by an anchor, if you see something on the fake news, on ABC, CBS, NBC, even Fox News, with the occasional exception of Fox and Friends, if you see something on the fake news, if you hear something on fake news radio, believe it or not, this is the truth. It's actually less likely to be true than if it had never, ever been reported at all. I'm going to repeat that because this is a very important point that I teach, but I want you to remember it. And repetition is the mother of learning and skill. If you see or hear something on the fake news, it's actually less likely to be true than if they had never reported it at all. If the fake news says something, you may safely assume that it is a lie intended to manipulate you, or it's an obvious factoid, that is intended to make you say, yeah, no, they're not lying. Like some silly thing about, a truck was derailed off just outside of Pennsylvania, ran off the road just outside Pennsylvania. Something that's someone would have no motivation to lie about because it doesn't really matter in terms of the long-term scheme of things. I feel bad people were hurt or whatever, but so again, I'll say this one more time. I'm going to say this a third time because it's so important. If the fake news tells you something, believe that it is less likely to be true than if it had never been reported at all. Because the fake news, whom I know intimately, people, the showbiz types, the vaudeville types, who need to be on the radio, need to be on television, need to go into TV, with very rare exception, are untrustworthy people who profit from our misery, from the American people's misery. Do not trust the fake news because they are dirty, rotten, self-aggrandizing liars who want you to fail. And we want America to fail here at americasmansman.com. This is Peter Vidala. Thanks so much for listening. God bless you.